And welcome back to What If the Third Hokage Had Adopted Naruto, part 20, part 20, part 17. I think this is going to be the last part we'll go for, but we'll see what happens. So, we left off with basically the with Fourth Great Ninja War happening. Now, there are differences here. There's no Kabuto in this version. Orochimaru is basically taken out of the equation thanks to Itachi. Sasuke is currently resting from surgery from his eyes. But because there's no Kabuto, there's no Edo Tensei here. So really, what's going on here is that while Obito does ultimately acquire the Rinnegan and put one into himself, he is unable to really make his six paths, if to be honest. And that's due to the fact, I mean, he can make them maybe out of Zetsus, but I think, and maybe he'd go that route, but I don't think he'd trust, I don't know if he'd trust the Zetsus 100%. But ultimately, if he were to make it, he'd go that route. I don't think he'd turn them into Jinchurikis, though. I think he'd keep them, honestly, in the Geto Maze statue. And because of this, you wouldn't see him turn to, unless he gets Naruto's chakra, like the Fox chakra, he's not going to be able to turn into the Six Paths version of Obito because he doesn't have that chakra, because he doesn't have the chakra of the Demon Brothers. Doesn't have it. Not Demon Brothers. Whatever the brothers' names were from the Cloud. So now we have an interesting problem here for Obito. How does he go about, setting off the war? Well, I think he goes the same way he normally would. Creating a big boom, and then the Zetsus are coming in and attacking. He's got like millions of them. We know that. But Naruto, for all it's worth, is still on the island. He's still, training, all that. And really, there's not much else Naruto can be training with at this point. He's already got Kurama's chakra mastered. Now, someone did bring up whether or not the seal, I think I mentioned this in the last one, whether or not Naruto would have encountered like Minato and Kushina in the seal. I kind of skirted around that issue, A, because admittedly I'd forgotten. But B, and more importantly, while he probably would have, it wouldn't have changed anything ultimately. If anything, it would have just bolstered his resolve. So really, it's just him doing Sage mode, Fox mode, Sage, Fox mode, working on all the techniques he has, doing more wacky Rasengan shenanigans, until eventually he's tired of being on the island and wants to join the war, which ultimately leads to him coming in and beating the crap out of all of them until him and him and Killer B ultimately, will come across Obito. Now, is it Sasuke and Obito coming across Killer B and Naruto? And where does Sasuke ultimately come into the equation here? Because Sasuke ultimately found Itachi and went to fight Kabuto, and that's not what's happening here. So what's it going on? What's it going on? I think ultimately it starts with Obito fighting Kurama and Naruto. Fighting Killer B and Naruto. And I think they're actually able to handle the paths pretty easily, because they don't really have any of the abilities that Naruto, they don't have the full set of abilities that the Six Paths normally have. And they don't have the tail beast inside them, so that's pretty easy. But fighting Obito is much more difficult because he has to try to get that counter stroke in. And what ultimately comes down is Kakashi, pops in. He, does the Kamui. Kamui's one of Naruto's clones. And so when Obito does the phase thing, Naruto Rasengan's in the face, which was a great scene, by the way. It's like, haha, oh crap. Which was a great moment. But then Sasuke ultimately goes and throws his hat in the ring. And this is where, Kabuto, I keep saying that. Obito and Kakashi have their fight in the Mangekyo realm. It's going more in Kakashi's favor. They ultimately get out of there. And because they don't have all the chakra, they can't go into the Six Paths form, which ultimately means that there's a problem here. How is this going to work? Well, I think this is where Zetsu is going to ultimately force Obito's hand, because Obito is going to be on the losing side of the fight eventually. He only has so much chakra. He could, in theory, make himself a pseudo six-pass Jinchuriki without the Nine Tails, but that would just be incomplete. And I think Zetsu, Black Zetsu, does ultimately chime in, being like, I'm going to have to stop you right there. Keep in mind, they don't have the added benefit of having Yamato there to bolster the power even further. So they don't have that. And, the Black Zetsu ultimately attaches onto Obito, saying, what are you doing? It's like, sorry, but we're going to have to speed things up a bit here. We need the Fox's chakra for the ultimate goal, to resurrect Mother, and you sadly aren't living up to the end of the bargain. But we know someone who can. And then just it's like, what are you? And using the outer path, ultimately, because he still has a Rinnegan. All right, they're able to bring a body suddenly starts to emerge, and it is the revived Madara. Unfortunately, he doesn't have his eyes, as we remember. But Zetsu does throw him one of the eyes he collected, and or actually throws him, honestly, both the eyes, I can imagine, because he took the other eye he had it for safekeeping, and he just takes Obito's Rinnegan, which now brings Madara back to full health immediately, and he's just standing there gazing past the like, so it came to this, did it? What a shame. What a shame. But it is as we planned ultimately in the end, isn't it, Zetsu? And so, he's looking around, and he can sense and see the Fox's chakra in Sage Mode in Naruto. Sasuke has come at this point, and he's just wondering, he's just choosing words. He's like, Sasuke! Everyone's like, Sasuke! And, everyone's there. The whole ninja army's there. Everyone's there. And Madara's like, the Nine-Tails Fox will be mine. And he ultimately does take in all the other tail beasts. And he creates almost the six-pass form that he needed. But he's not quite there. And so Naruto and Sasuke clash with Madara. The other Zetsu clones are going haywire. The Ten Tails isn't able to be completely born because he's fused with it, obviously. And there's a lot of Kibas going through Zetsu clones. Sakura smashing through them. Kakashi's lightning blading through them. Shido's eating them with his insects. Neji and Yara back to back. There's a big blast. It's like, I got you. And Hinaga's flying. One of the Zetsu's about to get her, and all of a sudden, leap hurricane. Boom, and Rock Lee grabs her. It's like, are you okay? I'm fine. Great. And they go. There. By the way, yeah, there's your little hint. That's where I was ultimately leading this up to, is that, Hinata's like, Rock Lee's got the smile on his face, like, don't worry, Hinata, you are my comrade, and I will protect you. And Hinata's got a little bit of blush on her face, like, thank you. And they go back to fighting. So yes, and there's your answer to where Metal Lee came from. It is truly the son of Hinata and Rock Lee. Actually, to be fair, just a sidetrack real quick, Hinata and Rock Lee probably would actually make a cute couple. They actually probably would. Because he is a very similar to Naruto in many ways. So he's got a type of personality she would most likely be attracted to. But anyway, the fight continues. Naruto and Sasuke merge Susanoo and Kurama. They're clashing. And, Madara is trying to absorb at least some of the Fox's chakra. And I think he does get to that. He does manage to siphon off a little bit of the chakra. Naruto and Sasuke bat him away, but ultimately he's able to form the tree ultimately. And the ultimate question here is going to be, is the Sixth Bats capable of getting involved? Like, do they reach the point where he gets involved and gives them their boosts, their ultimate boosts? As in the fight against Madara, surprisingly, I don't think so. I think they're able to push him far enough that Kaguya is able to take control, and then Sasuke, using Susanoo, is able to block out the Infinite Tsukuyomi. Sakura gets, protected as well, and Kakashi as well. So that group, the Team 7 gets protected, and then they kind of get pushed back by Kaguya, and basically Kaguya's presence, if you will, there, as well as them pushing Naruto and Sasuke to near breaking point where Obito and Kakashi and Sakura are doing the best they can to hold her off. Without Obito, because Obito at this point is kind of just dead. He doesn't get that redemption in this version of Obito. Gives them that time. It gives them that time in reality as Sakura's trying to keep them alive, to bring out their six paths power, and ultimately they are still able to push Kaguya back. Admittedly, Kakashi isn't as useful as he is in that fight in the canon due to the fact that he doesn't have Obito to give him the perfect Susanoo and the Kamui lightning blade, which would have been really cool if he had those things legitimately. But whatever, it's all good. It would have been cool to see what like an Eternal Mangekyo with the Obito eyes would have looked like. Either way, so yes, ultimately they are able to seal Kaguya away and release the tail beast. Unfortunately, it is still Sasuke going like, I'm sealing the tail beast away. It's like, and Naruto's just like, Sasuke, damn you! And they have their fight, which ultimately Naruto wins a bit, just a tad bit more easily because he's had more experience. He's also got the seals. Now, unfortunately, in this type of fight, this wouldn't have been a time where I would have brought the seals up. Although, don't get me wrong, I can see a scenario in this particular what if where seals are going to be brought up for the Kaguya fight, and I'm really looking forward to that scenario. I think that Naruto most likely would have been using the seals to absorb chakra, like on his hands. Even if he could try to create chakra seals to seal her in place, keep her paralyzed, they wouldn't have lasted very long. Even high level seals, he just didn't have the seal. He didn't have any seals that he knew besides the one on his hand that could have done it. So ultimately, him and Sasuke clash. Using a combination of seals and his full power, he is able to beat Sasuke a bit more easily. Although I think they still lose the arm. I think they lose it more just from the wrist down, or the forearm down. So the whole losing arm isn't anywhere near as bad in this version as it is in the other version. By the way, we look at that scene where they both lost their arm, but they lost it from right here, from the shoulder. From the elbow. But we noticed that Sasuke is still missing pretty much the entirety of that arm. So was it one of those things where he lost too much blood so they had to amputate more of it? Or did they just choose to lose the entire arm? Either way, we cut to the aftermath. Kakashi, I think, ultimately, I don't think Kakashi gets, well, no, Kakashi's got the more experience. He'd still get named the 6th. Naruto gets named the 7th, ultimately. And going into the future with the Boruto, we obviously don't do Boruto in terms of their lineage in that story, because I don't watch Boruto that much. I know a little bit what happens, I know what happened with Naruto and Kurama. I know about, the Otsutskis and what they really are. I know that stuff, but I don't pay or go that much in depth with Naruto. Or Boruto. I just don't care about it. And the little bit I watched and read, I'm like, I don't like Boruto as a character. He is not as compelling as a character as Naruto is. So, and Neji actually survives this, by the way. That's a big thing. Neji survives this version. So him and Tenten ultimately get together. Metal and Hinata get together. They have, I think, Hinata and Metal. Metal wishes. Get him. MILF. It does the body good. Rock Lee and Hinata get together. And they probably have actually 2 kids, most likely. Well, they probably have Metal at least. Metal actually gets the benefit of having a Byakuya in this case. Now, Sasuke actually doesn't wind up with anyone, I think. Sasuke just is fine doing what he does. And Naruto and Sakura actually obviously wind up together. Now, that being said, Sasuke might not wind up with anyone, but I think he does end up having a kid. And I think he does have with Tayuya. I did save Tayuya there for a reason. Because I felt like that made sense. They weren't really in love or anything, but they had the physical attraction. And she felt like, yeah, I'll have your kid. Sure, why not? Because, strong ninja, all that, and motherhood. I do like the idea of motherhood. And I think Taiga ultimately mellows out and will be like, I'm a good mother. Karin's all like, I want Sasuke. But no, at least not in this version. I'm sure there's versions of what is that Karin and Sasuke can wind up together. Problem is, Karin is too fangirly and too psychotic and thirsty, so I think that's one of the big reasons she did not work for Sasuke. But in terms of Naruto and Sakura's kid, you still got, I think, Boruto and Hinomari, whatever. Basically, yeah, but they look very much different. They don't have the Byakugan or anything like that. I think Boruto looks the same because he takes after his dad. Hinomari, though, took after her mom more or less, but they still have the whiskers. So I think she probably is like a little mini version of Sakura in this case. And all's well that ultimately ends well. I could have probably gone a bit more in depth, but that's the thing. When you take out, honestly, there's no Edo Tensei here. There's a big crunch on what happens because you don't have the Edo Tensei, you don't have the the pseudo Jinchurikis that actually had the fragments of the Fox Chakra, so you can't really get the true six paths Obito or Madara that you got in the original. Now, granted, Madara having the Rinnegan does allow him to absorb the Fox's chakra, so he could still get a pseudo form that he did originally. That's just why we got there. But without Kabuto there to help revive Sasuke, and the fact that the fight takes place a lot later on, I think you would still get the six paths intervening. I think it would just happen during the Kaguya fight, and it would be under a crunch, basically. Like, ugh. And they would still. It's hard to say whether or not they be vaporized in the lava because they were floating thanks to Naruto's chakra orbs, but because of Kurama, I think they'd be okay. And Susato. So ultimately, that is where we're ending this what if. And it did seem a bit crunched, but even if I had gone on an extra 10 minutes, don't think it would have mattered that much. I think I basically went over all the main details. Any finer details, let me know. Like Itachi's not brought up, so Sasuke might be harder to convince, but ultimately Obito might spill the beans about what actually happened or all that. Well, honestly, I don't think even that Sasuke knew what happened. He just didn't care at that point. So even confronting Itachi, he still didn't care at that point. So I don't think that would have really changed. Orochimaru, by the way, doesn't get revived, so there's that as well. So there's no Kages coming to aid in the fight because there's no Edo Tensei. So ultimately, yeah, there's a lot that kind of happens that doesn't happen in this. But ultimately, that is where we end this what if. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow with Who Would Win. Who Would Win week starts tomorrow. And I got to actually write out my schedule for next week for all my videos. So keep that in mind. Also, we're starting a new what if for Naruto. We got one more new Naruto what if that I'm choosing from the suggested suggestions. But after that, there is one that I'm planning on doing specifically every now and then, like every couple of Naruto what ifs. I'm going to go into that one. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you next time, folks. Later.